Oh my God! Ah!
Avatar: The Way of Water is an epic sci-fi action movie directed by the one, the only James Cameron. And this is a sequel to Avatar, which came out in 2009, also directed by James Cameron. That's a movie that took the world by storm. It made like a zillion, bazillion, gajillion, infinity, I'm not really sure how much money it made. I think it was really closer to like 3 billion or something. You're back to Pandora and you have Sam Worthington returning to reprise his role as human turned Na'vi warrior Jake Sully. You have Zoe Saldana back as Neytiri. You have a really, actually a pretty talented cast of people, some of which I don't want to spoil because I don't want to give away that they're in the movie. Then you're gonna have questions and that's gonna lead to some stuff I don't want to talk about. Regardless, the story takes place, I think 13 or 14 years after the events of the first film. Jake Sully and Neytiri are living in the forest with their family, raising their family. And as you would guess, the Sky People are back to fuck some shit up. I say Sky People, but it's really more of a euphemism for Earth motherfuckers. We're just gonna stick with Sky People. So the Sky People come back to Pandora. It creates this big war thing. Jake kind of has to get his family to safety and they have to kind of discover some new things about Pandora. James Cameron, James motherfucking Cameron. You bastard. You fiend, you devilish mastermind, you fucking cantankerous, cranky old fuck of a genius. How did you do this again?
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But I was very excited to see Way of Water because I was hoping at the very least it would be a pretty big improvement on the first one. After all, you have all this extended time that you have to get the movie right. And this movie kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. At a certain point, I even doubted that this movie was going to happen. I thought like they secretly canceled it or something. Like I was just like, what is taking so long? But now it is finally here and I have seen it. In fact, I have seen it multiple times now. Not only is it better than the first one, it dwarfs the first one in comparison. This is one of the best sequels I've ever seen. It's one of the greatest, most epic sci-fi movies that I've seen in my life, especially in the year of 2022. What James Cameron and his crew have done with the visuals of this movie, there just aren't any words. My jaw was on the fucking floor at several moments watching this movie. Scene by scene, frame by frame, it's just littered with so much beauty. This is a staggering, stunning, monumental, gargantuan achievement in terms of visuals and visual storytelling. The underwater scenes, which is a big selling point in this movie. The movie is called Way of Water after all. The underwater scenes made me wet and I didn't even know that was possible. I shouldn't be able to get wet. I should be getting hard, but nope, I was dripping. I was a leaky waterbed in this one. The underwater scenes are really where the beauty really is accentuated. And again, I'm not really sure how James Cameron and his people did it, but I was in utter awe. Also, I want to shout out the musical score for this movie real quick. I can't remember the composer's name. I think his last name is Franklin or something. I could be getting that name wrong. I do apologize, sir. It's not my intention to disrespect you because you did a hell of a job with the score, following up for the late, great James Horner. Rest in peace to that madman. But I could tell he was friends with him, or maybe it was a Cameron decision, but a lot of the score also does sound like the score from the first one. There are some new themes and some epic cues that are picked up in this movie that I did appreciate, some stuff that sounded brand new, but either way, this is a powerful, emotional, heart-thumping score, and the way that it combines with the visuals, it creates such an immersive feeling of just, oh, I'm here on Pandora. Speaking of the world of Pandora, I missed you. It's been way too long. The world building was the best thing about the first Avatar besides the revolutionary visuals. The world building is once again a big source of strength for this movie. James Cameron doubles down on everything that made the first trip to Pandora awesome, and he expands on stuff. And there are different tweaks and twists that he adds to the lore of Pandora. There's a whole new culture that Jake and his family are discovering about in this movie. World building in this movie makes me even more curious about stuff in the future, for the other Avatar sequels. Because you know James Cameron has 5 or 6 of them things planned. For the love of everything holy, I hope we get to see all of them. I really do. As far as the characters, the motion capture work, the acting, the performances, all of that is A1 level stuff. Everybody gives a good one here. Sam Worthington, I used to actually think he wasn't that good an actor. I also didn't really care that much about Jake Sully in the first movie, but he was actually really good here, not only from a performance standpoint, but I also really appreciated what they did with his character. I appreciated the different situations and challenges that his character had to go through as a parent and a family man in this movie, compared to what he was like in the first movie. I also really love the dynamic between him and Neytiri. I love the way that they compared and contrast as far as parenting styles. Neytiri is that's still my number one bitch. I still love that woman. I would say the family dynamic is absolutely the strongest part of Avatar. Like, this movie makes you care about this family. It makes you root for them. It makes you invested in their survival and invest in their storylines together. That's what gives this movie the emotional heartbeat that is just pulsing through a story that is admittedly kind of simple. I don't personally subscribe to the notion that simple story means that it's a bad story or a weak story. Just because some parts are predictable or maybe you've seen some parts of it before, that doesn't necessarily make the story bad. I've said, like, for years on this channel, it's not about how cliche or overly familiar something is. It's about the execution. I think there are just enough little tweaks and adds to the narrative in here, combined with the lore and the world building, it creates something that resonates. You're like, fuck yeah, wait, why am I crying? In the first Avatar movie, James Cameron was making a lot of messages about the forests. In this movie, as you would guess by the title, it's about the ocean. The fact that you can have a strong ass message about the oceans and environmentalism in this movie, but also combine it with a very powerful, strong family dynamic. It's a very simple thing to grasp, but it's something that I think works for this movie for sure. One great thing I'll add in here about the kids, you know, Jake and Neytiri's kids, is that they have a much bigger role to play in this story than you would think. They kind of own the moment here with their parents. It's kind of a co-lead type of thing. Like, yeah, Jake and Neytiri, like, they're still, you know, the badass 1-2 punch, but the kids have their moments. They all have their moments. And I thought that was pretty awesome. When it comes to blockbuster filmmaking, this is the standard. This is what it should be. It should look like this. It should feel like this. The action sequences, by the way, I haven't even talked about those. Last hour of this movie is pretty much non-stop, balls to the wall. I don't want to call it white knuckle, I'll call it blue knuckle. Action set piece after action set piece, action sequence after action sequence, so many mind-blowing moments, so many memorable action scenes. I don't think eye-gasms are a thing, but my eyes were not sweating, I was not crying during this movie. I think my eyes were coming. That's how beautiful everything looked. Like, that's how aroused I was by the visuals in this movie. You just want a huge blockbuster experience that immerses you in this world and gets you to get invested in coming back. I think James Cameron knocked this bitch out of the park. I think he did about as well a job as you could do with a sequel like this. Having said that, there are some problems with the movie, of course, some things that I didn't like, some things that bothered me before the end of the runtime. For starters, I have like 1 or 2 unanswered questions in this movie, and they did bother me the longer I thought about them while watching the movie. And I have seen the movie multiple times. Neither time did the movie answer my questions adequately. It's one of those things where, like, maybe they might answer some of these questions in sequels. This is a 3-hour movie, and while I do feel like most of the movie is paced really well, there is a point in the middle of the second act where things slow way the fuck down. The story is not really progressing, and I think this is where the movie is gonna feel the longest. This is where the length of the movie is really gonna come into becoming an issue for a lot of people. Also, I think there are a handful of characters in this movie that are not really given the opportunity to do more, and I think the opportunity was there, and I think it would have made the story even better. I thought there was opportunities to go deeper and to flesh some of these characters out a little bit more, and I just didn't really see that. Some of these characters are just kind of there for a specific purpose. One character in particular, it's because they didn't spend more time developing a particular dynamic with this character that some of their actions later on in the film kind of just felt weird, and it didn't really feel earned. Avatar: The Way of Water is the sequel that I wanted. It's the sequel that I hoped for. It blows the first one out of the water, no pun intended. The Way of Water absolutely deserves the highest praise I can offer. Superman Prime. Which one do you prefer, the first one or the second one? Give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.